we're getting this, while we're getting the conversation going, please feel free to put your questions, because I will answer your questions too, right after the presentation is done. Okay, so
Yes, so I
can we
started
go?
the recording. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Can we go to the next slide? This prompt came about post-COVID. And it says, reflect on something someone has done for you that has made you happy or thankful in a surprising way. Again, this could be a teacher who's impacted you, somebody who, a parent, uh, a foster parent, it doesn't matter. One thing to remember, though, is you are going to college. It is not this person who's inspired you, right? So don't fill the whole essay up with just this other person. That's not what they're asking. They're telling me, how did this person impact you, right? So the essay has to be about you. You can talk about the other person, but it really has to be 90% about you and how you felt and how you grew from this interaction. I had a student write an essay recently, and one thing I always tell parents and the students is that it's a collaborative process. I will give you my ideas, I will guide you, but you are not under any obligation to use those ideas, because at the end of the day, it's your essay. So she was writing about learning to make friends, and then the story just jumped from having issues to the resolution, the problem solved. What happened to the whole thing in the middle where you tried different things to make friends, right? You don't just say, these were my problems, and then fine, everything became hunky-dory, everything was fine, just normal. Part of the process is also, what did you go through to reach this happy ending? Okay, next, please. So one of the questions that's coming up is, how many paragraphs do the colleges prefer? Not too long, not too short. It's 650 words. It's a set limit. The supplements also have a 250, 150. They will tell you. All the supplements, all the essays have a word limit. Okay, the next is share an essay of your topic, of your choice. It can be one you've already written, one that responds to a different prompt. So even this one, and then there's another one to discuss accomplishments, realizations, have details, explain how you've come to those points in your life. Use the 5 senses. It's called the craft of writing, right? Use dialogue. This is not the persuasive essay. So we'll talk about that in depth in the little down the road. Now, one of the questions is, how would one figure out this opening sentence to attract the reader? Can we talk about hobbies, like languages that give someone their voice? You can talk about just about any topic, as long as you remember you are also presenting yourself to get accepted to a college. So how you frame it makes all the difference. There are no boring topics. There are no humdrum topics. There's no run-of-the-mill topics. It's all about how you write it and how you position yourself and unpack your story. Can we go to the next slide, please? And I'll have more details as we proceed in the webinar. So we also have supplements. Now, I spoke to a mom just like an hour ago. Besides the Common App, which goes to all the schools, not every single school needs the Common App, but a great deal of schools do. Some schools also have a supplement. Now, the supplement typically says, why do you want to come to this school? Why do you want to pursue this major? And what do kids usually do? They'll write about the school and how wonderful the school is. So if they say, okay, we want to go to U of C, it's by the lake, it's a wonderful school, it has Nobel laureates, I will learn so much here. Do you think that school doesn't know all that about themselves? They know they're by the lake. They know they have Nobel laureates, right? Nobel Prize winners. They are asking you, how do you fit in my school? Where do you see yourself contributing to my school? So these supplement questions, they're 250 words long. They require you to know the school, know the program. So you can actually customize it. And these, especially if it's a competitive school, you have to customize it. Don't cookie cutter it and write the same sentences and just flip out the name of the school. And even if it's not a competitive school, even if everyone can just walk into it, remember there's money attached to these. There's like tens of thousands of dollars attached to a scholarship. If you get one for 4 years, if you get one for 1 year, who wouldn't like $10,000 shaved off their package, correct? Okay, next. Yeah, so this is just saying that students should be trying to convey to admission officers why they're a good fit for that institution and be unique to themselves. In other words, I know Syracuse is in the state of New York, but I want to know more about how the student sees themselves in upstate New York. Just going back to the UFC example, if you were to say, I love kayaking and UFC is by the lake, I see myself going and kayaking every Saturday morning. Or if you say UFC has a kayak team, I see myself on that team because I've spent the last 4 years on my kayak team in my high school. Or you say, well, I've never kayaked. UFC has a strong kayak team. It's right by the lake. This is my opportunity to try something new. All the scenarios work so long as you show how you connect. So kids might think, supplements 200 words. I'll do it at the last minute. The problem is you're customizing it. You're looking at about 10 schools on average that you're applying to, maybe 6, maybe 12, but on average, maybe 8 to 10. Where are you going to fit that in if you're not starting early, right? You need to look at the school, at its website, see what it offers you so you can speak to that. And then you have to fit it all into 250 words, which makes it a bit of a challenge, right? So you have to think through these things. Next. Now, what makes for a stellar essay? I alluded to it a little briefly, but let's go on. Next. So I always say it's a selfie and it's in words. And in your selfie, you always want to look nice, correct? And remember, you're not writing an essay for the essay's sake. You're writing an essay as a potential student. It's how you're presenting yourself to your admissions officer. Next. And because it's your selfie and not your parent's selfie, write about yourself. I've had kids write about how their grandmother is their hero, but they only write about their grandmother. Or they'll write about some movie that so inspired them. And they'll write the whole movie plot. Neither those actors are going to the school, neither is the grandma going to school. Correct? So you want to write about yourself. They want to get to know you. And please don't use ChatGPT. They have software that detects it. Next. And because it's a selfie, you use a filter. And in writing, your filters, your grammar, your punctuation, making sure there are no typos, no fragments, no run-ons, no missing, no missing words. Okay, next. And because it's a snapshot, selfie is just one moment in time. It's not a documentary about you. It's not a biopic. So you don't have to start from when you were in second grade. I've had kids start from when they were in fifth grade. But my thing is, don't go that far back. You don't have to, right? You don't have to give the whole story from when you were born and every struggle you had, if it's not necessary. Sometimes it is. So just remember that it's okay if you focus on the last 4 years of your high school life. Word choice matters, opening lines, making the right paragraphs. It has to be readable, easily readable. Next, please. So one question was, so Common App prompts are different every year, but the supplement part is always the same. That's not actually accurate. It could change from school to school, especially private schools. 1 year, U of I did not require the Common App. I was so shocked, and the kids were very shocked. When the year they came to me, it was a requirement, and all the supplemental questions had changed. So from year to year, you don't know. The last few years with the Common App prompt, they've been pretty steady, but you can't rely on it. But yeah, the theme has been fairly consistent in the last 4 years. Next. Okay, it's not your resume. Don't repeat everything you've said in your resume. All right, cover fresh ground and show your personality, not like if you sound funny, I'm not saying make jokes, but if if you sound confident, if you are humble, whatever it is, let your personality show. Common App essay, is it the same as a personal statement? It's very similar to the personal statement, but some schools might have a separate personal statement, like beyond what the Common App requires, but it's very similar to a personal statement. Okay, next. And it's not a persuasive essay. So the format that a persuasive essay follows, most kids are used to that. You make your 3 points, you write the 3 body paragraphs, you write what they call it, the counter argument, and then you write your conclusion. A personal essay format is nothing like the persuasive essay. All right. And then you don't need a unique story. You just have to be a very good storyteller. And that means using words, making it vivid, bringing your reader in, keeping your reader engaged. I've had kids write about learning to drive. It's a most common experience in the world, learning to drive. But she did a very good job writing about it. And like I said, somebody who wrote about scouts, most people, or most, but many people have written about being a scout. I've had kids write about being a Hafiz. So those are not uncommon themes in the Muslim world, but how you present your ideas makes all the difference. Next. And now the last one is be wise with controversial topics. If you're gonna, this is not the place to be picking bigger picture battles, all right? Some parents have asked, is it okay if I wrote about Islamophobia? Won't that make people feel like I'm judging them? It's how you tell the story without, that makes a very big difference. I've had kids write about this girl once, she wrote about being separated from her high school class when they came back from a service trip overseas, how she spent 6 hours in being interrogated and how humiliated that made her feel, especially in front of her classmates, and that she was holding up the whole group because of her. And in the end, she could have left the essay there, correct? But in the end, she took that experience and she said she started doing a lot more interfaith presentations. She did a Get to Know Islam series, etc., etc. So she took that experience and she showed something positive. And again, I had another kid write about being bullied, again, for being Muslim. And that could have been the end of that story, how badly it went. But in the end, it actually ends on a note where the kids got to know each other. And it became a positive story in the end, or it became a learning experience. It doesn't have to always be positive, but this is not the place to rip on other people or whine. It's also to show how you overcame the odds. And sometimes I had one of my first students, uh, his mom was very upset when she saw the essay. And she said, my son had spent 2 weeks in Mexico on a humanitarian trip, and you didn't write about that. Now, I have a question. If you spend $2,000 to go for a 2-week trip and you live in the city of Chicago, when you can go on the South Side, or you can find a food pantry, or you can find a shelter, and you can volunteer there the whole year long, which looks better? Which makes you look overprivileged? So we have to use a little bit of wisdom when we are writing about the things we're writing. Okay, next. And use humor wisely. This is not the place to start making jokes. Next. And then I always say start sooner so you can revise, you can change an idea. I've had kids completely change their idea for an essay. In fact, just this morning, I worked with a student who completely changed her essay. Because it takes you much longer. Sometimes you figure out that you don't have much to say in something you thought you had a lot to say. Next. And then don't compare yourself to others. A thing I hear often is that I had a very easy life. I had no problems. What am I going to write about? Or so and so has such a big, resume. They did so many things. What am I going to write about? That's not the attitude, and that's not even useful, right? Because we all have something. If you can write about learning to drive, you can pretty much write about anything, right? Now, when you're doing your supplements, don't think you can take the content of one essay and put it into another school, because sometimes you will take the school's name and crisscross it. Spell check is not your best friend. HAIR is very different from HARE. There and there is different. And then share it early, get someone to weigh in on it early, but don't overshare it either, because writing is subjective. You're having 7 people look at it, they'll have 7 different ideas, right? And then don't change fonts, put different colors, and just keep it simple. Next. So when should the students start preparing if they don't know the prompts? Usually the prompts come out way in advance, but also knowing that the Common App has not changed. You can practice writing personal essays. You don't have to, you'll get used to the idea of personal essays, right? And those prompts haven't changed much in those last few years. So there's no harm in practicing those. But if you are going to start in serious, I would say end of junior year, please start immediately. Use your summer so that the fall can be used to retake a ACT, retake a SAT, get your referrals, fix your grades. There's only so much room in a day. So use your summer to get these essays out of the way as much as possible. Does it happen? No. In real life, only a small percentage of students write their essays in the summer, but they do. Next. So because it's a stressful process, just remember that every day is a fresh start. And this is one reason kids work with me, is because they have so much conflict with their parents. So the idea is like, cut out the conflict. Child is not listening to the parent. If she works with a third person, at least it'll get done. I have a question here. I can't see it. It says, where are the prompts? How early can sophomores in high school have access to the Common App prompts? They're online. You can Google them any day, and you'll see what they were in the previous year also. So you can get started practicing. It's up to you. You can do it early enough so you have a handle on your personal essay. Now, if you have questions, I'm happy to take questions, but what do you think of everything we've discussed so far? And if you can write your questions, it's better.
Yeah, one thing, since I started recording a little late, let me just, for the purpose of the recording, go through the slide deck just one quickly in a minute so that we record it and then we will ask the questions. So.
Sure. And everyone else can put their questions in so I can watch for those. I'll give you a brief example. If I said I had pancakes and eggs for breakfast, how does that sound? Does it sound interesting? Do you want to join me for breakfast? But if I said I had fluffy buttermilk pancakes for breakfast, with with a dollop of fresh whipped cream and fresh strawberries and sprinkled with chocolate chips, do you now want to come and have breakfast with me? So that's the idea in writing also. Use your words, bring your reader in, let them experience what you're experiencing. So when should we talk about how the moment affected us, in the middle or the beginning? You could start wherever you need to. You have only 650 words, right? So it really depends on where you want to begin and where all the parts make sense together, right? You don't have to start at the very, very beginning. Like For example, I was working with a student where there was a domestic violence in the house. He doesn't have to start in the beginning that he grew up in that environment, right? He can start in high school and reflect back that this has been my living situation since I can remember. So the other question is, out of everything that gets sent to the school, how much does the Common App matter? Can it make up for weaker test scores? And I will say yes. I've had students one student took 7 years to graduate high school because she had learning issues, 7 years for a 4-year high school program. And she was accepted to U of I and another school immediately because she explained her situation in the essay. It said why she had those challenges. So the answer is yeah. How much does the Common App matter? It matters, right? That's why we're doing this. Also, when resumes and extracurriculars are so similar, how do you differentiate yourself? So I have served on the Northwestern Alumni Admissions Council, where we interview students and we score what they're saying. And those kids are very similar. They've been doing things since they were 3 years old. They've done 5, 6, 7 different extracurriculars. They've led some leadership, had some leadership roles. So your essay really becomes the place where you differentiate yourself from others. So one of the questions is, and my business is on writersstudio.us, and I'll put that there. It's writers with the S, studio.us, and that's me. And I'm also offering consultations, 915-8654. So if you're interested, I'm offering 15-minute consultations. And that's, what are the other questions? Have I missed something? Does anyone have another question? Because I feel I have covered everything that came in so far, but we have so many parents and children. There must be some more. Yeah, of course, you can talk about your sexuality in your essays. Just make sure that something came of it, you know. One of my most recent students wrote the whole essay was, you know, she had tried to commit suicide. So her essay was about the pressure she felt to succeed academically. And it explains, you know, why her grades were not so good or whatever the situation is. But it also, if you wanted to commit suicide, you're not going to be all there to focus on your grades and school and everything else because you're in such a sad place, right? And a hopeless place. So it explains to the admissions officers like what to expect and why something, a grade might not be where it is. Yeah. So any other questions? We wrapped up an hour-long conversation very fast. If there are no more questions, should I go ahead and read an essay for anyone? Do you want to see an example of a good essay? Okay.
Yes, please. We would like to see that.
So if a student is interested in a more selective program, engineering, is it advisable to apply for a less competitive program? You know, so Sarah, what you're asking is, you're asking is that if you want to get into a program for engineering, but if you say engineering on the application, you might not get in because it's so competitive. So apply for something else and then find your way into the engineering school. Am I understanding you correctly? Is that what you're saying? So you have to qualify for that. So the question is, should you? That's 100% up to you. But some people, they'll do even if they've applied, I know kids who applied to the, you know, the Keller School of Business. They won't get into the Keller School of Business, but they'll get into the LAS program or whichever the undergraduate program is. And then they qualify into the business program. At U of I can't remember off the top of my head if that's the process that engineering schools, their engineering school has. So I don't want to make a blanket statement because in the US, unfortunately, every school does things differently from the other. So I remember when my daughter was in college, because she was on a bio track, if she wanted to take education also, she would have had to add a year more, at least a year more, and make that a 5-year undergraduate program. And I didn't think that was reasonable because she could have gone and gotten a master's in that much time. But schools where it's multidisciplinary, like WashU, like Northwestern, they're very good at saying, okay, you can study music and you can study biochemistry, and you can have a minor in one or a major in the other, because those schools really want you to do everything you want to do. And they figure out, I don't know how they do it, but their whole focus is interdisciplinary learning versus very siloed programs like U of I. U of I is like you get into a School of Education, then getting into engineering, just forget about it. Can we relate our background to what we are studying, or should we put that in our supplements? It really depends. If you have limited material and you have to answer, you have to answer why this major, and you have to answer why this school in the supplements. If you put it in the Common App, you're not going to have a place to put it you won't have material to put into the supplements. And on top of that, you have to remember that the Common App is going everywhere, right? So have I had kids talk about their background and what they're studying? Yes, I have. They've talked about, loving science Olympiad and doing the experiment and how high they get on, accomplishing that, and the sense of, basically confidence and so on. Do I typically say write about it? No, because I say, what are you going to write about in why I love this major? But if you have enough material, and many kids do, they have enough material to write both very confidently. So then, yeah, go ahead and say, should our essay be related to the field of study we want to go in? It doesn't have to be. It can be up to you. What advice do you have for students who are struggling to find leadership roles? Do you think a student's application will be weaker if they start an extracurricular later? You can start extracurriculars whenever, people have a lot of situations in life. Some kids have to look after their siblings. Some kids' parents both work. They have to be home to get the school bus for the younger siblings. Some siblings have to look after, a special needs sibling, or they have to go and work after school. If you're going to work, where are you going to find time to do extracurriculars? So you write about your job. You write about the responsibilities you have after school, where you just cannot fit that into your schedule because your role at home requires you to be responsible. All of that can come in. And what advice do you have for students who are struggling to find leadership roles? Do what you love. You can start a club. You don't have to wait to get into a club. If you love gardening, go ahead and start that. The schools have a process, and I work with kids year round. I have writing workshops. So this year, not this year, but last year, I had girls who had been working with me start a club, a writing club at one of the schools in our local Glen Allen schools. So, that's something they started. They saw there was a vacuum, and they filled it. So if you want to say, well, I love knitting and my school doesn't have knitting, or I love to paint and I would like to start a club, speak to your counselors and you can do it. Schools are very supportive in the US. Anything else? Let's take a minute. Then you can keep sending your questions in, but we have a few more minutes, like 20 minutes more. So I'm going to go and read an essay, and you can tell me what you think the writer did well. So this is a collaborative process. This is not me just reading, but I want you all to tell me what you picked up. I don't look like your typical Bahadur Shah in and be part of the fabric and get along with different people, correct? So what you and I might not see is actually a very good essay and was written really, really well. Now, any guesses how many drafts it took to get to this point? How many drafts is that essay in? Any guesses? We're going to have to wrap up the conversation. 10? Not as many as 10, not 12. Maybe close, like 7 to 8. Okay? Yeah, more than 1 or 2. So just know that these things don't happen overnight. And sometimes they'll remember some details. Sometimes they'll remember some details. Sometimes I ask a lot of questions. My whole method is asking questions so that we think about all the different aspects, correct? And because I'm a writer myself, we use the craft of writing consistently in our work because that's really showing, not telling. And you'd be surprised to know this student, the original idea was about his travels across the world because his dad works in the airlines. And I said that will make you look a little bit, like a rich kid or a overprivileged kid. Is there anything else? So then we went with this. Okay. So we have to use a little bit of wisdom in who and how we're portraying ourselves. Any other questions before we wrap up? Any? No? So I'll just tell you a little bit about my own self. I'll make a plug for Writer Studio. I've done this for about 20 years so far and 15 years with essays. My background is is that typical of a good essay? Sarah's question, meaning typical of a good essay as in what? The revisions you mean, or what do you mean? The content, it varies. That the content is just as varied as the students. So it is all about the telling. It's how well you craft it, the details you include, the time you spend on it, So I can't tell you every student has written an essay like that. I have not had another student write an essay like that. That content. But have they written other essays which are very, very good? Yes. So I work online with kids, so only online. And it's usually after 5, it's on the weekends. And most of my kids come from Illinois, but I have a lot of kids from Texas, Florida, New Jersey, some kids from overseas. So it runs the gamut. Again, if we have no other questions, then I'll thank ISNS. Do you know what strategies or approaches the student used to write that well-crafted essay, the one you showed? He worked with me on it. So a lot of it is what a professional writer would say. And the basic rule is show, don't tell. So use your imagination, use the descriptors. It's a lot of that. Any other questions? Well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming and for staying through the conversation. And all of your questions were very, very good. I hope they were helpful to everyone and helped you understand the process a little bit more. We have another question. Should we talk about our racial identity? Of course. There's no reason not to. If you want to go ahead and do that, you can talk about your faith. How should we format the essay? There's no format for the personal essay. It's how well it comes together, how well the passages are interconnected. there is no format like you have one for persuasive essay. Okay. So unless you all have any other questions, I just want to say thank you for having me. And I'm going to post my details here. It's Writers Studio with USA@gmail.com. The website is writersstudio.us, right? Can we use a drafted college essay for a scholarship essay if it had a similar prompt? I've had kids do that, you know. My number, I'm going to post it down here. If anyone is interested, please text me. Give me a few, like a day at least, to get back to you.
Sister Nazish, I think your current chats are going to a private window. We don't see them in the
Oh,
group chat.
shoot. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay. Thanks for pointing that out. Okay. I should, oops. I'll do it to the meeting group chat. Correct?
Yeah, the number shows up now. Could you
Okay.
also post your email address through there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I did not realize that. So the email is writersstudiousa@gmail.com. Okay. And that's 2 S's. It's writers with an S and studio with an S.us. And the email is writerstudiousa@gmail.com. Again, I'd like to thank ISNS for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity. And we have your number, we have your email. Those who opted in, I don't send out emails a lot. I don't send out newsletters a lot, but when I do, I will remember to add you, inshallah. Thank you again, everyone, for your great questions. And again, ISNS for providing this forum. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallahu khairan. Wa alaikum assalam.